Okay guys, so this morning I wanted to go through pretty much, as I'm starting prep, I wanted to go through everything, well pretty much as much detail as I can from you, and so, because I know someone out there might give a fuck, and it's a case of just explaining everything, and I can refer back to people, I can refer people back to this video and stuff like that. So yeah, prep is underway now. We're going to start today. Today's the day, what's the day, 20th of January, so looking forward to it. The spotlight's on you, so pretty much what I want to know and what people want to know is just what's the process, what's the goal here, like tell me just tell me everything.
Sure.
Go for it all.
Sure. So, hey guys, first off, if anyone doesn't know of me or have heard of me before, I'm AJ. I run Team MVM bodybuilding coaching. I primarily work with physique-based athletes, so people who are looking to either get into an off-season or are looking to step on stage like George himself. Obviously I've been following George for a long time. We've been mates, and that developing in the relationship is sort of a very big part of my process within coaching. I want to be friends with my athletes to a degree, more so from the perspective of understanding how they work and how they tick. So I'm very much understanding where George is at. So the process itself is, for him being a first-time competitor, it's very much about getting him on stage in the best shape possible. That's ultimately all we can do from a coaching perspective. It's going to take like another level of dedication that George hasn't sort of tapped into just yet, from a dietary standpoint, because it's going to take a level of mental fortitude that George hasn't taken his physique to before. So that part of the process is going to be very cool for you guys to follow, because there's going to be times at which George is struggling. There's going to be times at which he's going to potentially need you guys to kick him up the arse a little bit and reach out for support and help and some motivation. Like, that's very important. Motivation is a very key part of a prep.
Yeah.
So now we sit 29 weeks out from his first show, 29 and 28 weeks out. And a lot of you watching this may think, holy shit, that's a long time to be starting away from a bodybuilding competition. The timescales on natural bodybuilding are extreme. For George to get into the conditioning required, and we're talking lines on his arse, we need a lot of time. Okay, so I've predicted that George could lose anywhere between 35 and 40 pounds of body weight in his face. Okay, so to give that enough time, we need at least 25 weeks, at least. Given that the rate of loss is going to be faster at the front end of prep, we've just set up his initial macros. We're going to lose faster at the front end, slower at the end phase. The reason being is because at the front end of prep, we've got a higher degree of body fat, so our propensity to lose muscle tissue in this phase is much less likely than in the end phase of prep. Yeah. The end phase of prep, when body fat is low, our propensity to potentially lose tissue in this phase is extremely high. So we need to be very cautious of that. So macros are set up in that way. So we've actually got his coaching sheets in front of us now, so we'll roll through things. So yeah, like I said, 28 and 29 weeks out from BNBF and UKDFBA. Then we've also got training day and non-training day setup. So George is coming from a perspective of already having training and non-training day setup macros. He understands the reason why we're doing this. Mainly in a prep phase, it's because of the shift in energy balance due to not training. So instead of raising up his expenditure through steps or cardio, on an off day, we're simply going to drop back energy intake at this stage. In the future, we may well use off days to actually refeed up. They are beneficial at some point when we're really depleted and we need to see how the physique looks full. George is someone that trains hard, so the demand in his sessions is going to be very high for glycogen. So we've got to make sure that we're still fueling up when we need to, still recovering when we need to, still holding on to maximal muscle mass in our sessions by holding on to strength. So at the moment, we've got plenty of body fat, so we can utilize that as an energy store, so we don't need a lot of food on our off days. So the calorie shift is around about 400, so it's a large shift in calories. We're also prioritizing a little bit more healthy fats on our off day due to our training day fats being low. Our ability to get in things like salmon, fattier cuts of beef and red meat, a lot less likely on a training day, so we have the opportunity on a non-training day. Training day macros are still pretty high. From my perspective, starting a diet about 3,000 calories is a very good place to start. especially at George's body weight being 168, 170 pounds. 3,000 calories is a great place to be. It allows us plenty of what I like to call ammunition to start pulling away. We have ammo high going into this fat loss battle because George's food is very high and his cardio is very low. So we have lots of tools at our disposal. So over the weeks you will see George's training day carbohydrates drop. His protein will stay fairly static, and obviously I'll aim to hop on videos whenever George wants me to explain rationale behind changes. But most likely training day changes is going to be from carbohydrates, aiming to keep them as high as possible, and in that moment you may well see protein drop at some point, purely because carbohydrates are our most abundant fuel source for performance. We want to keep performance as high as possible. Body weight will be coming down, so therefore total need or want or requirement for protein can drop. And carbohydrates are protein sparing too, so we can see protein intake potentially drop at some point, but not much lower than 200 grams. Off day macros, the primary change here will obviously be potentially even raising some of these days when we need to, but the primary change will come from probably most likely fats on these days. I wouldn't like to see your off day carbohydrates go much lower, purely because you will see a huge drop off in performance going to the next session. Because when you get leaner, you need to replete glycogen, and you need to do that on your off days when you're not using glycogen as a fuel source as much. So yeah, George will be tracking pretty much everything. He'll be tracking his sleep, all of his macros, of course, his steps, his cardio, and the aim will be from now onwards, as he's been very, very vigilant in his off season, but to be extremely vigilant in this phase and very accurate. To talk very briefly on training, so George has been running a 4-day on, 1 day off split, with a bit of a difference in terms of body parts, haven't you? You've been running a slightly different body part split, but still a twice per week body part frequency. So frequency isn't changing, but his general split is. He's moving over to a legs push-pull split, with 1 day off after a 3-day rotation. 2 rotations of each workout: legs 1, legs 2, push 2, push 1, pull 2, with a slightly different variation on both, mainly on the compound lifts that are variating. The aim with this now is because with calories coming down, our recovery capacity is dropping off. We also had one-to-one discussions about George's motivation going into his 4th day of training. We were seeing a drop off in motivation going into the 4th day. We're seeing that sort of fogginess going into the session. So with that being said, adding an additional off day at the 3 days on mark would be beneficial in terms of making sure George enters every session with mental clarity, focus, and alertiveness. So therefore, session performance will rise. Hopefully we'll still see over the course of this first mesocycle, being 8 weeks, some strength gain. Just come off the back of a deload, so we'll have some form of patterning throughout this first initial week. We'll set baseline numbers for George in terms of where his lifts are at. The goal will then be to progress over a 7-week period, deloading in a reactive fashion. Okay, so we won't be planning deloads throughout George's prep. He won't be able to tell you guys, right, I'm going to deload next week, I don't think I need it, but coach says it's week 6. We won't act like that. We'll very much reap as much progress as we can out of a mesocycle, but we will be on the more cautious side when it comes to deloading. Okay, so when it comes to George giving me feedback that things are getting a little bit out of sync, sleep's poor, appetite's maybe a little bit shifted, perhaps he's even hungrier than before, perhaps he's not feeling his appetite's down, perhaps he's in his physique photos, he's holding a film of water and he's looking a little bit inflamed. A lot of these things, inclusive of performance going down, will give us the key signs there for a deload, and we'll keep our eyes out for them for sure. So that's training wise. Obviously, if you guys have any questions on the way we're setting up training, please let us know, please let George know, and I'm always in the comment section, so I can scour the comments. We can see any haters as well, trolls. So, and then the guidelines basically as well, from a nutrition standpoint as well, just to touch on briefly, I'm very much an advocate of keeping the peri-workout meals intact. Okay, so these are our meals that primarily fuel performance and thus recovery also the post-workout window. So it's very important that George is keeping his pre, intra and post-workout setup intact for as long as possible. These meals, macronutrients wise, are obviously very individual suited to George based on his current caloric intake. Someone, for example, on a lower carbohydrate intake than George we'd probably see a lower post-workout meals. Post-workout meals still going to be upwards of 100 to 150 carb. You know, for most in the prep phase, that's a fairly substantial post-workout meal. That will maybe taper at some point if carbohydrates get really, really low, but ideally we want to keep, you know, our 60 to 70 carbohydrate pre-workout combined with some fats. Then we want to keep our intra-workout shake intact. Then we also want to keep our post-workout intact. Like I said, this is primarily fueling performance and recovery.
Yeah.
Other meals, at the moment you can situate carbs in other meals because we've got enough carbohydrates to be playing with. But in the future, what we'll see is a drop off in carbohydrates in the meals that are outside of the training window.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, and then George will be checking in once weekly. So George is exactly the same as any other client. He'll be checking in via video. He'll be getting a video back from me. There's no sort of special deal or anything here with regards to George's check-in process. He is the same as everyone else. Yeah, he will be giving exactly the same service. Obviously, George himself, like any of my other clients that wanted to come up and train with me and see me, are very much welcome to. But you know, George has come up. He's made, like, we organised this. George wanted to do this, so George stepped forwards to make this happen. And that's very important. If you've got a coach, you want to develop a relationship with them, and you want to get everything out of that coach.
Of course.
Come up and see them. You know, come up and spend time with them. Do a training session. Do some posing. You know, we went through some posing yesterday. We'll go through some more this morning. And yeah, it's just about setting up for everything up as optimally as we can. So yeah, I hope you guys just sort of enjoy the ride. Fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Got any more questions, Georgie, that you wanted to ask me?
So I mean, you pretty much covered them. I asked you a few earlier, didn't I? But you pretty much covered the baselines in regards to a few bits and bobs I had. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty much aware of what I need to do and stuff like that. But if anyone who doesn't know AJ, what are your Instagram, email, if anyone wants to contact you, you know, plug away, mate.
Sure, okay. So basically, if anyone wants to sort of learn more and follow me and George's journey consecutively as well, I would highly recommend signing up for the site. The site itself is a very much a growing part of my business, and it's something that I really do want to grow this year. We've got multiple people logging on the site now. Obviously, George is going to be logging his prep in full detail on the forum. We're also going to be ideally doing some form of video content. Some of our sessions will be up there together, etc. So I'd highly recommend joining www.madebymorriscoaching.com. It's $4.99 a month, guys. Even if you're a student, it's the cost of like going into Subway and buying like a bloody footlong or something.
Yeah.
So it's not that pricey, and there's a backlog of almost 200 videos now. So if you sat there for a day, you know, you could literally try and catch up on most of it. And you'd learn a lot. There's a lot of Q&A based stuff, informative videos and workouts in the forum, of course.
Definitely.
So that's where I'd majority say if you could get me, that would be great. Obviously, me and George have got the podcast. I've got a YouTube channel myself, which is mainly podcast at the moment. And then my Instagram is AJ_Morris_. If you want to follow the team in Instagram as well, it's just teammBM_. And yeah, just like thank you very much for sort of following George and thus following me. And we will, like, I'm not even saying hopefully we will fucking do you proud. Like George is going to look very good on stage, and he will do himself extremely proud, and I will not allow anything less than that. So you can have confidence in that we're going to bring something worth hanging around and watching this for. So yeah.
All right. I think that has more detail than what I expected from you in this video. This is like a video itself. It's like 14 minutes long.
It's like your walkthrough video.
Yeah, it's going to be like a walkthrough video, pretty much. So I'll probably just upload this to YouTube on itself, you know, and just see people can just watch it from like week one. You know what I mean? So yeah, if there's any questions regarding anything we've missed out or anything that AJ's touched upon, then just comment down below. Very straightforward, or message us on Instagram. Always links will be down below, of course. But yeah, excited, nervous as well, but excited. So it should be good. I have your full trust, and I know you'll get me to where I need to be. It's just like, you know, it's sometimes of a case of, you know, you can give every single person the tool to do it, but it could just down to themselves to actually do it. And I'm very much aware I can do it. I 100%. I've done it before, like nearly done it before. Not like this, but
you got the minerals, George.
Oh, definitely. So yeah, looking forward to it. Nervous, and I'm just gonna put this in the video. You know, this is just gonna be a separate video. And yeah,
week 1.
Bye. Week 1. Bye.
Bye.